Everybody say, oh yeah.
What's up?
He's better than Oprah.
Come on, y'all. This is Shaun T, and it's time to trust and believe. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Trust and Believe. Today, I think we're going to find a lot of peace. And if I can just be a bit selfish, I think I'm going to find a lot of peace because our guest today and I have some similar life stories. And I feel like we can learn from everyone if you just take time to listen to other people's story, internalize the lessons that they've learned and how they actually digested their own situations. You know, I think they can really help you out. And so today on Trust and Believe, we have DeAndre Sinette. If you follow him on Instagram, the minute you turn on his, or the minute you go to his page, you probably feel an overwhelming sense of peace, which is what I get. I mean, you just scroll through the page and you just hear this voice that's amazing. They want to live, breathe, and love. So without further ado, everyone welcome DeAndre Sinette. DeAndre, how are you?
I'm doing absolutely amazing. This is a lifelong dream, actually, to be speaking to you here. This is so dope.
I think that we find people in such, incredible ways. And I have to be very honest. Sam, who is my assistant at Shaun T Inc. and also does a lot of our online stuff, he really pays attention to me. And I think at some points in my life, he's focused on actually what I need in my life. And
yeah.
He's the one that introduced me to you. And I have to say that it was a great, I call you a great find.
That's so great.
But with that said, I mean, give me a little background on your story. I know we have something very similar in common in terms of our childhood. Just tell me a bit of background about you and so listeners can really understand who you are and where you come from.
Wow. No, thank you for hyping me up. Hopefully I'll live up to the hype. My name is DeAndre, and I was born in Louisiana, but grew up mostly in Texas. And, being from the South definitely has its advantages in hospitality, but also a lot of the disadvantages in the just really strong religious and conservative strongholds. And so that was kind of just, I grew up very Christian, and I didn't grow up with my father or my biological father, but I also had another father figure in my life. And I did not know that he wasn't my father until I was around 10 years old, actually. And so that was a lot of where the abuse came from. So I was abused as a child. And that kind of, I don't think I have a memory of there ever being a time where I wasn't abused. Like that's my childhood memories. It was all about just trauma and not understanding why I was never good enough. And so that led me on a beautiful seeking journey. Like I said, I grew up very Christian. I think my great grandfather actually contributed to the church that I kind of grew up in every summer, and that was something that also hurt me a lot in growing up. I just really couldn't understand the correlation to why God would let me suffer. And the last time that I actually was in the church, the last time that as a teenager, when I decided to leave, I was in a youth group. I went to one of my family friends about 3 hours away from where I was living. And I was 17 at the time, but there were also 10-year-olds at this youth group. And the youth pastor said, Jesus is tired of all the gay people in the world and he's coming down to burn them all. And I was just, my heart was so torn. I was like, I can't do this anymore. I'm already depressed. And now I'm because I also was closeted bi back then. I hadn't came out as being bi. And so, it was just so much pain as a child. I just did not know my form in the world. I felt like me existing was a burden to the world and a burden to the people around me. And that led me to seeking a little bit more of the fitness journey. So that's when I started. So actually, it was so crazy when Sam reached out to me to tell me, you know, I was going to be on a podcast with you, because one of my first memories with fitness is just dying with my mother doing your insanity workouts. Man, I was just like, what is going on? But yeah, you were like one of the first bouts of my fitness career or fitness journey. And so that led me into doing like a lot more physical bodybuilding type stuff. And I entered more of the fitness industry as a influencer before influencing was even a thing. I think I was like 18 or 19. And I was just kind of just sharing my journey about the struggles that I was facing and correlating that with my fitness. And then that kind of got old, and it's a very manipulative industry as well. And so me being young and naive, you know, certain companies took advantage of the knowledge that I had crafted as a young millennial that was really good at technology, and then just basically took advantage of that. And that hurt me even deeper. I already had like this really deep sense of abandonment and manipulation from authority. So that just like kind of ingrained that behavior and belief in me. And then that's when I had a friend basically tell me to go to yoga. And that's when my real healing journey actually started. And I couldn't stand yoga. I'm telling you right now, the first time I went into a yoga class, I just wanted to leave the exact moment. I was like, what the heck is this? This is not for me. You know, because I was pretty like, and it was also a very spiritual class. Like, it wasn't one of those yoga classes where you go to stretch a little bit, maybe you break out a sweat to some jams. No, it was like a real authentic yoga class. I love it. It was just like insane about how much my body, I was never really actually feeling my body, even though I was working out a lot. It was more so doing it to run away from my body, to run away from all of my problems. And then, you know, once I actually gave yoga more of a chance, it dropped me into just like the seat of my soul. And that led me on a journey. I definitely still battled my suicidal depression up until actually last year. I moved to Los Angeles, actually. And, you know, I've been teaching for 5 years now. But even during my teaching, I didn't commit to it fully, just because I still had this belief that life was basically suffering and dying, and that's all there was. You know, that was my outlook on life. Like, why try to become better when you know you're going to fail? That was kind of the essence of my life. Up until last year when I moved to Los Angeles, I got deeper into shrooms.
Now, before we go there, because your story is so full of color that I kind of want to go back just a little bit so people can kind of relate to just your story a little bit, and something that I want to really share with you. And I'm so happy that you said, which was, when you are abused as a child, when you look back on the memories of your childhood, it does really feel like your entire childhood was full of abuse, meaning even if it happened twice that year, it felt like it was every single day, because in our minds, that's what we were hiding. That's what we were battling. I'm getting a little bit emotional here because, you know, I never had anyone, you know, validate that for me as a person who was sexually abused. And, you know, it happened a lot, but beyond that, it felt like it happened every day. And so it's kind of going back there a little bit. What were some of the things that you felt, you know, were really, and that this might be a little twist, empowering you as you were going through this really difficult time?
Honestly, I really think that, well, singing actually got me through a lot of my trauma. So I had you know, as a child, you don't really know any therapeutic, especially in the Black community, mental health. And that's another conversation. That's a really big struggle that we face. But yeah, singing actually was my escape. That was how I expressed. So I actually grew up very creatively inclined. And so half of my struggle, my big sister, very book smart. So I have a big sister, And she's very book smart. So she was the achiever, the performer in the household. And me, a lot of the times where I got in trouble was because I pretty much did not live up to her standard of intelligence. Or at least that's the way that I perceive, because most of my troubles came from not performing well in school. And so I was made to feel like the dumbest kid on the planet. Like, I was even told that, like, it was like, there is no kid stupider than you. I had one time I was told, actually, this is multiple times, I would rather have a brick wall as a son than you. And, you know, when you hear those things, you're just like, well, what the heck am I here for? Like, why do I exist? And so, yeah, I listened to like John Legend every single day, and I would just sing my little heart out. And I think the power of expression, and it's really ironic, or it's just such a paradox to see my childhood. My voice was taken away from me, and I was never allowed to express anything. I was always, you know, whooped and beaten into crying, but also like manipulated into like thinking that crying was bad, you know, but you're enforcing this pain into me, but like there's no other option but to cry. And I was also, you know, made to think that crying was not for men, and it was not for, you know, not for boys. Boys don't cry. And I think all of that, you know, there was going back to so many nights in my bed, you know, even in some of my shroom journeys, I would go back to a specific memory when I was 9 years old, and I was crying in my corner, and I was just like, it's going to be okay. I was just like that voice that, you know, that voice that you hear inside of your head. I kind of acted like I was going back in time and just planting that it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. You're going to do amazing things. This is actually, in a way, in a sense, this heaviness, this pain that you are given is actually going to be your biggest blessing. And that's how you're going to, you know, reach people, is because you have suffered so greatly.
Man, I think that while you're talking, there's so many things. I mean, you also brought up the church and how, you know, you're in church and you feel like the church is the thing that's supposed to protect you, when in actuality, and this is obviously, I tell people no shade to the church.
Yeah.
I think the church has actually progressed a long way when it comes to sexuality and acceptance. But we were taught as young people that being gay was bad, or being bi was bad, or anything other than what was considered the norm and what the Bible taught us was just, you know, not up to standards, which in turn exacerbated the, you know, just the negative feeling we had about ourselves in general. How did you cope with that with religion? Because I think that a lot of people are still going to church now, or maybe to the same churches that have actually told them that they weren't good enough, and they are struggling. I mean, I know how I was able to overcome that, but what was your way of overcoming or forgiving the religion, or have you?
Yeah, that's a very good, deep question. I love that one. Religion and me have been in a beautiful battle since, you know, I can remember. And I think the one thing that I have understood, because I have been going, you know, I flirted going back to Christianity a few different times, especially after, you know, when I was in Texas, most of the people that you're going to meet are most likely Christian. So, you know, in the dating pool, a girl was a Christian. You know, I try to go back to church to win her over. But it was never, I think the one thing that has healed some form of just allowing myself to be more open to the church and religion is that I met this pastor, and his name is Earl. Earl, and he's a pastor in Dallas. And first of all, he came to my yoga class. Like, it's so cool to have a black pastor who you look up to as like, it was like when I first heard him speak, it was like he was speaking into my heart, but it was also just like seeing another figure that looks like me, you know, as commanding this audience. And he's not teaching oppressive Christianity. He's teaching, you feel the essence of, you know, whether you actually believe that Jesus existed or he didn't, you cannot deny that his archetype is something that we can all live up to. And he reminded me that it's not, my view of religion was looking at, I think I was relying more of the people rather than than actually sitting down with the wisdom of the message. To this day, I say most of my kindness does actually come from my Christian upbringing. And, a part of that is because just I have such a gracious mom. My mom is an absolute incredible queen who has endured so much abuse herself. And, she's a Christian. I don't identify as a Christian anymore. But seeing the way that she holds so much grace in her heart, it just reminds me that God is everywhere. And so actually, with forgiving Christianity as a whole, though, it was when I sat down and I realized that a lot of my frustrations were because I thought, you taught that God is this omnipresent father who is, really looking to create cohesion or coherence in the world and is going to look out for you all the time. But in my life experience, I was more so abandoned. Where was God when, I was getting punched in the head? Where was God when I was being manipulated or, taking food away from me? Like all these things. And you look into the world, like, why does God still allow Black people to get murdered by the police? And I had to, because I have now ventured so deep into the Eastern mystical traditions, that is actually how I understood Jesus more. And so yoga actually brought me to more. So even though I'm not a Christian, I still say Jesus is my best friend. Even though I hold Jesus and Buddha as two perfectly crafted divine human beings. And I think the essence of sitting down and understanding that all there is for a purpose. And that's what really helped me forgive also the abuse of my father figure. And it helped me forgive my real father never being in my life, because I realized that God sometimes, God, for love to exist, there has to be free will. And God, I think God understands this, that if he takes away evil, if he doesn't allow evil to exist, then nothing else can exist. And you look at this, you look at the shape of the duality, and we can only experience and appreciate pleasure because we have to experience pain. And I transcended this belief of, thinking that I needed to be perfect in the eyes of God. And instead, I realized I needed to be human in the way that God made me. And that makes me feel so much more present to Jesus' teachings, biblical teachings, but all teachings. I realized that almost every single religion is trying to tell the same story. It's just we're all so caught up in our own ego that we try to dictate everybody else's story to conform to our own. But that just doesn't, I don't know, I feel like that's why there's so much division, is because we're unable to connect to each other without having to conform to each other.
Yeah, it's like this thing where I believe that a lot of religions are very parallel. They teach a lot of the same things, but just like what's happening in our society right now, people are so focused on being right instead of doing what's right. I do remember when I was about 16 years old, I asked my grandmother if a 6-year-old boy that studied Buddhism didn't ask Jesus Christ to be his personal savior, would he too go to hell just like a murderer? And her response was yes. Now, I wasn't upset with her, and it was for clarity for me, because I remember at 7 years old, I was at this Christian camp, and my counselor was, he was an asshole. I conversation with, but he was such an asshole. But I remember at that particular camp, that's when I accepted Jesus Christ as my personal savior, because I said, I remember saying, if this guy is this mean, I definitely need Jesus right now. Him, he was so mean. I think my brother still remembers the same guy. But
oh man,
it's crazy. My point to all that is that when it comes to religion, it's just really interesting how so many people are focused on being like, this is the right religion. This is, this is the way you should live, and this is the book you should read. When in actuality, I decided my religion was the golden rule, because if you really look at the depths and like the fine tuning of most religions, they just want you to do right by people. They want you to love people. They want you to pray and obviously, give to a higher being and ask for help. But I just think a lot of people are focused on I'm a part of the right religion, instead of just saying, regardless of what you're a part of, like if we just do right by each other, we're on a good path. That said, I want to take a quick break for the podcast. When we come back, we're going to get more into how DeAndre found peace and love and happiness through yoga and shrooms.
Let's get it.
All right, we're back with DeAndre Sinette. I love that last name, by the way. And
thank you.
We are going to go further into the peace and love of yoga and his, I want to say, journey into shrooms and how that actually helps out. So let's talk about yoga. I know some really fine yoga instructors, practitioners, if you will. And a little fun fact for my listeners and you, one of the very first fitness DVD that I was a backup person for was a yoga DVD, which is so crazy. That's so funny. Most people think that, dance was my first, kind of like groundbreaking into fitness DVD land, but it was actually yoga. You obviously spoke about yoga a lot, and your, excitement that Earl, your pastor, came to take your yoga class, and I could totally see why that would be a monumental moment for your practice. But what was the one thing that really made you get into yoga, and where has it taken you today?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. Yoga has been honestly a pivotal understanding of my life, like even meditation. So the first time, I told you about the first time, that I went to a yoga class, but, obviously you do so much more than that. I've done so much more than that. I think that was the first time that I actually entered a yoga studio was in Jersey City. And then, because I was only living there for like 6 months, and that was just when all the fitness stuff crumbled. And so, I moved back to Texas and I got into Ashtanga. So that was something that I always wanted to be strong, so I learned that. Tough. Go
to this class at gym on I think it was 54th Street in New York City, and this amazing woman was taking me through it. I was like, I can do this, and she took me all the way down. Sorry, I just had to let you know that.
No, I love that. And it's so funny because that's kind of like what my teacher did to me too. Like, she humbled the mess out of me because, I got veins coming out of my arms, I got chiseled abs, all these things. I can't get my head off the ground on the back bend. I feel like I'm 80 damn years old trying to touch my toes. My fingers don't even go past my damn knees. And, she immediately says, she grounded me and was just like, you lift too much, you lift too many weights, you're too tight, you're too stiff. And I just like, the competitive mindset is just like, why? Like, I need to immediately not be these things. And I think that was the first time, especially because I don't think people have realized the effect that technology has had on the millennial generation, because, we're the first kind of generation that has been forced to, pretty much integrate your life with social media, besides the younger generation, which now they grow up with it, immediately.
Right.
But we had to learn how to, integrate. And so I've always said that social media seems like this kind of scientific experiment on humanity. And So, I've been on Instagram doing Instagram things since I was 18 years old. And my job was pretty much always, behind a screen and a lot of instant validation, a lot of instant gratification. In yoga, that is not, it is the opposite of instant gratification, because it is a practice and it's a lifelong journey. You don't just do yoga for a few years and call yourself a yogi. It's you show up to it, you try to live it as much as you can. Mm-hmm. Until the day that you die. And so it was really cool to see how, if I stayed consistent with the practice, it wasn't what I needed to let go of all the things that I thought I needed to be. And I actually had to sit with who I actually was. And that's what yoga taught me, to sit and observe and to listen, because, even Jesus says, be slow to speak and eager, fast to listen. Yeah. And when you listen, when you open yourself up to listening in meditation and yoga, it tunes you into everything. I don't think I would ever be able to say that my abuse was my blessing. That's crazy for a person that, hasn't gone through the healing journey of that. It's like, I can't even fathom my abuse actually being one of my biggest blessings. Mm-hmm. But through sitting in, beautiful crying sessions, do pigeon pose, you're immediate, damn it, why did I have to go on all that? Like, why?
But that's actually a beautiful moment. I know you're laughing about it now, but when you're in the depths of that, that's, the beauty of that, of being able to connect to the emotion is, in my opinion, a beautiful moment, especially as young Black males. We were taught to cry, right? At that point, it becomes so beautiful because it's freeing.
It's so freeing. And, yoga validates me a lot because I'm a deeply emotional human being. And I'm trying to stop saying I'm emotional for a guy, because everybody deserves to be emotional. And it doesn't, I seem to stop putting that label on being emotional for a guy. But I'm a double Cancer. I'm a Cancer sun and Cancer moon. So, I got that. Them waters be flowing.
Look, breaking up with you would be a nightmare. We could talk.
Oh man, it's so funny. But yeah, that validation of understanding that these emotions that I've been given are a gift. They're not something to run away from. And you learn about the energetic bodies in yoga. And so, we have this emotional body, and emotions, when you allow, one of my favorite sayings is, emotions are energy in motion. And when you try to stop energy from flowing, it gets stuck. And so yoga has really, like you said, it's freeing. It's this allowance. That's what I get mostly from this practice, is acceptance. And when you can dive deep into acceptance of everything, you then are gifted the sheer amount of grace. You really can't find grace without first accepting suffering. And, that's one of the higher paths in yoga. And then meditation. So my biggest form of meditation is called Yoga Nidra. And this is something that I specialize in. And it is basically a system, a very old and ancient system within the yogic system that brings you more into your body. So first of all, you have to discover your body. So it's really good for healing like body dysmorphia and all these other things. We become so disconnected from our bodies as human beings. And so the first pretty much part of this practice is going through a journey throughout your body, and then in all types of ways. And that can last up to 20 to 30 minutes. And then, you go through these visualizations and you go really deep into the subconscious mind. And so you're in this place between waking, wakefulness, and you're in a place in sleeping, or all the way deep sleep. And in that realm, I feel like it is the closest thing you can get to heaven, because you are in this ethereal, I mean, absolute ethereal floating tank of understanding that you are a soul on a journey, and that everything in this experience is for the benefit of everything. So, the practice of oneness. And I actually think this is, even relaying back into Christianity. It actually teaches oneness in Christianity if people, really understand how he says that everyone is one in the body of Christ, yet we are all given different, gifts. And if you compare, that's why comparison is a sin, because it is saying God made you perfectly. Even if you have flaws, those flaws are necessary for life to go on. And you see nature, you look at nature. Yoga has allowed me to also understand nature as this place. Veganism is very popular in yoga, but I've been vegan, but I now practice this diet that is, if I am going to have some type of suffering on my plate, and I think that everybody will realize that actually we can't transcend suffering on, in our bodies. Like something has to die for us to live. And that's the same thing. When we die, something else is given life.
In a plant, think about, that plant is, in a sense, it's living because because it can provide you something. It can provide nutrients. And I always like to say that, not to, vegan or vegetarian people, I'm not trying to cause a firestorm. To your point of, something has to suffer for you to live, in terms of, especially when your nutrition. And there's something some sort of dynamic in the organism of whatever it is you're putting in your body has to change in order for you to get, the energy from it. So validate that. Continue on.
Yeah, no, 100%. Thank you for saying that. Yeah, you go into a place of really becoming grateful of, you see it, you observe it in nature. Everybody always, there's a lot of, preconceptions or ideals that nature is so peaceful. You go into nature and it's so peaceful. It's like, if you actually observe nature is fucking savage. Nature don't give two damns about whether you think it's peaceful or not.
Bro, my family just went on a camping trip, and Scott and I, for my first time, I was sleeping in a tent, because I don't do tents like that, but now I do. Yeah. I thought I was going to be outside, and it was going to be this really quiet, and it was loud, not loud as in banging noises, but you hear everything. You hear animals going through the trees, even if it's a slight little bit of wind, you hear crackling of things. It's definitely, like you said, savage. If you really open your mind to pay attention to it.
Yeah, it is savage. And that it gives me even more peace knowing that, in a way, I will never be able to transcend suffering itself, because suffering gives way to everything else. And so when we talk about peace, my peace comes from not trying to run away from suffering. It's to embrace it as just a necessity of life, just as bliss is a necessity of living. Bliss only comes from the lower frequencies. For, whatever death gives life, life gives death. And it's just this beautiful understanding that everything is perfectly crafted. Even though, for me, as a meditation teacher, it's even crazy to think about, if everything was perfect, I wouldn't even have a job anymore, even as a fitness instructor, if everybody was healthy and fit all the time, it's not, we are almost given our purpose too by these things. And once you accept your purpose, I think that will allow you to find more peace, even if your peace comes from helping people out of their pain, or just being even able to. One of my things that gives me peace is my sheer ability to endure pain. It's not even me being out of pain anymore. It's like, oh, pain is going to happen in my life. In yoga and meditation has now given me the tools to be able to handle it. It's not so much that I'm asking for the storms to never come again. I'm asking for the peace and the strength to really embody the eye of the storm.
Speaking of storms, and, we'll get to the shrooms in a little bit. I wanted to segue to the storms, because I think that a lot of people are going through a terrible storm right now amid the and what's happening in the world. And a lot of people, even if they didn't know it before, are now realizing that mental health is extremely important. And by just a mere change in nature, you know, we have to now find ways and be flexible in how we live. And by doing that, be it a loss of a job, spending more time with your spouse, which can cause a lot of angst, greatness, and it could cause a lot of turmoil, spending more time with your kids, becoming a teacher. People are now realizing that mental health is a bigger thing than we thought in the past. And so speaking of those storms, how did you manage to come out of the storm and knowing that mental health I always say it, no matter what you've been through in your life, if you've had the mental health awareness or had to go through any kind of challenges with mental health, it's always with you in a sense, just because it's a part of your history. How did you manage to either come out of that, or however you describe it, to deal with it in a way where it helps you help other people today?
Yeah. I'm like trying to figure out even if I can tell this story without going into the shrooms.
No. If it combines, I mean, let's go to the shrooms with mental.
Okay.
So I think
let's do that.
The reason why I think that is actually interesting, for lack of a better way of saying it, is because, a lot of us turn to a lot of other areas. People talk about therapy or, pharmaceuticals, none of which, in my opinion, are bad. I don't want to judge people, but I don't think we've ever heard how shrooms and mental health correlate. So take us on a journey.
Oh man, this is exciting. This is like one of my favorite topics to talk about.
Okay.
Just because I never saw myself as a person that would ever do such a thing like shrooms. And so the first time that I ever did shrooms was to heal a heartbreak, actually. Oh. So I had a 2-week long, pretty much just dive deep in love with this person, head over heels with this person. And after 2 weeks, she basically just disappears from my life, and, marries her boyfriend that she had. Totally, I could go deep into that, but I just want to stay a little bit more on topic for this. Somebody told me shrooms had the ability to pretty much take you back in time to experience things so that you can actually move forward from them. And that was a big energy hold and blockage in my heart. I was running into the same situations, running into the same people, just in a different body, just a different human. And so at some point I realized it was me that was the problem. It wasn't all these other people that were hurting me, because of course they did hurt me. But I also, in a way, allowed them to hurt me. And I accepted that hurt as just, that's what happens in my life. And so I was like, I can't do this anymore. There has to be a better way. And so I was told about the shrooms. And the first time that I ever did shrooms, I didn't do a lot. It was like a gram, and I did it in my room, or I did it in my living room. So I always done them by myself. So I sat with that and I played some music, because we used to listen to, this was like when first Sam Smith came out.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So when first Sam Smith was like on the rise, we used to listen to Sam. She introduced me to his music. And so after she pretty much disappeared from my life, I think I cried for like 3 months. Listening to Sam Smith. Every time a Sam Smith song came on, the tears started flowing. I'm like, no, why?
You too.
They will get you.
Yeah.
It's so true. And so, me sitting on the floor, I'm starting to feel anxiety, anxious when they start to work, when it's the come up. And I just had this thought. I was like, I need to go listen to Sam Smith. I need to listen to the music that's going to take me back into that place. And so, I did, and it literally shot me into almost as if I was reliving it over again. And I cried deeper than I've ever cried in my life. Like, I want to say I cried for at least 2 hours. But what was so interesting in those cries was I also started to laugh. It would be like hysterical crying that turned and blended into laughing. And I couldn't tell at a certain point, I couldn't tell if I was crying or if I was laughing. And it became this expression of understanding that, you know, in that great pain that I experienced, I also experienced great bliss because I finally felt like I had the ability to get past it. And I think as somebody that has experienced chronic depression for my whole entire life, my whole thing is that I would never be able to move past anything. I was always paralyzed. Like, there were so many times where I wanted to move out of my bed, but I would be in my bed for almost all damn day because I had no idea how I could move forward in my life. And so after that experience, that was a soul shifting experience. And I didn't even realize that it was that big of an experience at the time. I also saw all these crazy sacred geometry and Aztec symbols plastered everywhere. I was like, what the heck is this? What is all of this? Why am I seeing this stuff? And then, so almost a few months after that, I ended up moving to Los Angeles. And so that's a lot more intricately woven into this culture, like psychedelics, a lot more open-minded here in Los Angeles. So I researched, I'm so curious about how the human brain works, like psychology, all of that stuff. I am so deep into those studies. And so I started to just research a little bit about how psilocybin can actually rewire your mind. And, you know, I experienced some type of rewiring, you know, during that heartbreak, because I did actually find a sense of, I am over this. Like, I am past this. I can tell this story without, you know, holding resentment against this person. And so I made a vow. I pretty much made a commitment to myself to go through a grueling journey using shrooms. I kind of signed up for the pain that, you know, like they say that there can be some really bad trips, especially if you have a lot of trauma, because you're going to be thrown into this place of you have to sit with your shit. And so the first time that I did shrooms in LA, it was definitely a bigger dose. I think I did an eighth, like 3.5 grams. And I sat in my room.
Before you go there, I want to know, I have a couple questions because I have, this is so out of my knowledge that the first time you did shrooms, were you alone?
I was alone, yes.
And that didn't make you nervous? Or because I think for Duda, I would be like, I need a medic over here.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely was nervous, but when you're at the point, I think it was also just kind of where I was at the point of desperation. Like, I'm either going to kill myself or these things are going to help me. And I've always been also a warrior just because depression isolates. Right. And so I've been so accustomed to being isolated to where it was kind of like second nature I never even thought about doing it with anybody else. Like, it was just right off the bat, I was like, these things are for me to do alone. And that was a really big blessing. But at the same time, not everybody is like me. And that is something that, you know, I have to personally acknowledge. There are like a lot of the times, if anybody even has any type of history in their family of schizophrenia, of, you know, being able to go into a place of psychotic, you know, those are things that you have to look out for. So I definitely recommend anybody that is wanting to, you know, dive deeper into the journey in that world of shrooms is to have, you know, somebody that sits you, that has experience and understanding of the medicine and also understanding of psychology.
You know, a lot of people could be like, shrooms, isn't that what you do at a party or, you know, whatever? So how do you get this? Like, what is this whole process like?
I mean, it definitely has that use. And for me, I've never been called to use the medicine like that. It's been a call to, it is a teacher. And so I had a really good friend that has access to these things. And so, you know, I have connects and they allow these things to happen. Just because it's also kind of an illegal substance. I don't want to tell too much.
Of course.
But, and it's,
I think I respect the way you call it medicine, right? Because, saying drugs and calling it medicine, calling it medicine implies that the use of it is for the purpose of getting better. And I just kind
It's
of
therapeutics.
Very therapeutic. Okay.
Yeah. And so through that, it's also the intention. So I love that you said that, because that is something that anytime that I catch myself like saying like, shroom is a drug, I'm like, no, shroom is actually everything technically is a drug. There's nothing that is not a chemical reaction. And shrooms for me, why I choose to call it medicine is because I personally have experienced more healing. So I'm doing therapy right now, actually, and I had never done therapy before then, but seeing people that did therapy and then seeing how much shrooms in the span of 6 months, how that healed my depression. And, I see people on years and years and years of therapy who have not been able to understand it. And so that is why I call it medicine, is because it is this magical form that God has somehow created for humans to have I think that, I fully wholeheartedly believe that this is something that was crafted for humans to be able to look inside, to be able to sit. And there has to be, for any relationship to work, there has to be boundaries, and there has to be a willingness to let go of control. And so I think that's one thing that people get really nervous about with shrooms, is that they will kind of be projected into this realm that reminds you that you are a human being and you are not in control of everything, that you are kind of at the mercy of God. But in that sense, you also feel bliss because you realize you don't have to do everything, and you can actually finally be. And I think that, that's why they call us human beings, because we are meant to be in communion with each other, in communion with God, with spirit. And shrooms, they take you on a trip. When you sign up, when you make a whatever spiritual contract, if you say, when you sign up for, the healing journey with shrooms, you sign up for a ride, and it is not going to be the funnest ride of your life, but the benefits of that journey, you come out on the other side. So I'm going to tell you about just a few of my biggest and most profound trips. So that first big trip that I did in my room alone, I was playing music. So I always do music. I speak music better than I do English. And so, I'm doing music, and I'm just listening to the intricacies of the vibrations of the sounds and all these things. And then, I'll put on a blindfold and I'll lay in my bed. I put on a blindfold and I laid in my bed. And I just sat with all of the anxiety that I was feeling. And that actually turned into excruciating pain. I'm telling you, I thought I was going to die. I ended up in fetal position, and it felt like somebody's hand went into my stomach and just turned my intestines upside down. And in those moments, and I am crying rivers. I'm crying Justin Timberlake rivers. And and in that, I felt that pain had a purpose. And if I were to get through that pain, I had to have faith that this was not an experience that was going to kill me. And I think that's one thing that people get really afraid of on shrooms, is can it kill you? There's actually there's no dose that has been measured that has ever killed a human being. So you can never take an amount of shrooms that will cause your death. And I think that's one thing that you can kind of find comfort in. But in the time that you do them, you will think that you are dying, or you will wish sometimes that you were dead, just because sometimes the pain that you have to re-experience from living is so painful. But you realize that in the same essence of the shroom trip, you realize that you will never be free to live if you don't go through that pain. There's actually no way to live as a free human being, to live as a loving human being, if you don't go through your pain. And so the next few times that I did shrooms, same thing, pain. like, oh my gosh, excruciating. But every single time it would be a little less, and it would be a little less, and I would return, I would integrate, and I would return a little bit more me. I would ask myself these questions of, why are you like this? Or where does this originate? Because they were starting to take me back into suppressed memories. I started to actually access memories that I had totally forgotten of traumatic events. And getting that insight and getting that clarity is almost this form of closure too, as well. And then that led me up into last June. So a little bit over a year ago, I did 10 grams. And I don't know if you know, so basic dosages for shrooms.
I know you did 3 grams before, and now we're
That's it. Yeah, so 1 to 2 is I say most beginners start there. 3 to 4, pretty hefty. 5 grams is considered a heroic dose, which is Kid Cudi type space realm. And then 10 grams is that's double the big heroic dose. And I did it for the purpose of really giving up as much control as I had over the experience of healing. So it was like, shrooms, I'm going to trust you, because if I take this amount, I'm not going to be able to control me basically not wanting to take that amount. As soon as I do it, I have to sit with that. I respect the decision. I respect the shrooms. Do your work. Give me some soul surgery, put me under anesthesia and give me some soul surgery. And that actually, because I was so afraid and I was expecting pain, I actually did not experience pain. That was the first time that I've done shrooms and I did not experience pain. And so this is when I don't tell this story to a lot of people, just because it's crazy. It sounds crazy. But I was sitting in my chair and I transition more into regular music. I was playing more emotional music, but then I got into 432 hertz and 528 hertz music. And that was what I did my trips with. And so, I have my headphones in, I have my blindfold on, sitting in my chair. And then I just felt called to take off my blindfold. And in front of me was just this, do you know sacred geometry? Sacred geometry symbols?
Yeah, a little bit. I'm not well versed in it, but I know what you're talking about.
No, it's all good. So there's this symbol called the flower of life, and I don't even know how to describe it. It's just all these little circles that form. Basically, it looks like a flower. So the sacred geometry flower of life symbol, and keep this in mind, I had never seen it before. I've never actually observed it and said, hey, this is the flower of life, sacred geometry.
Is this the one?
Yes. So that's the one. That became my vision. As I opened my eyes, that became what I was. It was I was looking through a lens of that, and it was plastered everywhere. And then just the colors of the room started to change. And what happened after that was I felt this ethereal higher essence of energy just shifting. And when that happened, I was in my chair, right? I stood up and I just felt this sweeping, this surge of power. And I don't even like to call it power, just because sometimes we have such a bad vocabulary definition of power. But really, it was this power that came through me. And I said the words, I love myself. And that was the first time that I really felt like I actually said it and meant it. And this sweeping storm, almost beautiful storm of electricity actually I started to feel electricity in my body. And it actually went up my spine, through my neck, out of my cheeks. And where your third, they say where your third eye is.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of energy there, and it just it was all just projecting out of me. And it was actually so much that I thought I was going to die from an energy overload. So I went to the mirror. I walked over to my bathroom. I looked into the mirror, and there was just sacred geometry symbols flowing where all of my chakras were. And I identified, because, my Christian upbringing and outbringing or leaving it, I identified more as an atheist. I resonated more like saying like, okay, maybe this is all just a coincidence and we're not even supposed to be here. Like, life is just still morbid and dying. We suffer and we die. And that was the first time that I really felt God, like being one with God. I no longer identified as an atheist. I knew it wasn't just some, I think that's also another problem with religion in itself, is that religion seeks to tell you rather than for you to experience it. It's very hard for somebody to fathom the essence and the energy of Jesus just by being told about the energy of Jesus. But in that moment, I really experienced what everybody says God is. It was no longer somebody telling me about God or how to impress God. It was more so it wasn't me getting to understand God. It was me understanding that everything is God. There's nothing that is not God. Even evil, is God. And so what was strange was after that, it actually, because I feel like I went through so much of an energetic shift, I actually almost became sober again. I lived, when I moved here, I lived next to the Century City Mall. Yep. So I lived at the time right next to the mall. So I actually, on 10 grams of shrooms, I was hungry. So I went to the mall to get food.
Monica Boulevard, yeah?
Yeah, on Santa Monica Boulevard. Yeah, so I literally walked over there to go get food on 10 grams. And, at first I was nervous. I'm like, how am I going to I've never actually been out and about on shrooms before. And I actually talked to people. I could talk to people. I felt normal. And what I understood was, it was like, and why I called it medicine, it was that feeling of, you ever hear about, they say monks or enlightened gurus, any of these types of people that have already, pretty much tasted what enlightenment tastes like, or just understanding God, is that shrooms and these other forms of medicine don't affect them like a regular human being, because they're already kind of moving into that energy.
Right.
And so it actually stopped affecting me as strongly. And it was really interesting. And after that, I have still never experienced depression again.
Wow. That is unreal.
Unreal.
That is unreal. There are a lot of people who are going to be listening to this. And I think that I want to tell people, it's probably too late now to tell them this, but while you're listening to this, is because a lot of people will hear shrooms and they immediately judge instead of journey. And I think it's really important that we allow ourselves to go on a journey of other people, because if you don't allow yourself to go on a journey, you limit your ability to continue to learn, which is what we should be doing every day. The old adage, you learn something new every day. I like to add to that, but only if you pay attention, right?
That part.
Right. Only if you pay attention and digest it. So how long, if you take 1 to 2 grams or 2 to 4 grams or 10 grams like you, how long does this trip last?
So a trip, depending on how your dosage, so 1 to 2 grams, even anywhere up to 5 grams, I would say expect, and I'm just going to give a rough estimate because everybody's, psychology, physiology is different in the way that we interact with different drugs and medicines. I'd still say expect anywhere from 3 to 6 hours of, but that's also including coming up and, slowly coming down. And if anybody has any experience with anxiety, especially, sometimes it will enable that tenfold, because you're losing your sense of control. Anxiety really is just losing your sense of, or perception that you are losing your control. And there's nothing that you can do about it. What I say is, that's when, if you are worried about the extreme anxiety, you have someone that is compassionate and empathetic, and is there for you. Or also you can smoke marijuana if you have that ability where you are, and that can ease some of that space and that time. But yeah, I'd say expect anywhere from 3 to 6 hours. If you're doing above that, though, you can experience it sometimes upwards to like 10 hours. But you're not peaking. So that's the thing. You're not peaking all of that time. That's the whole entire journey. You know, as a roller coaster, there are sometimes those low parts, and then there's also the high parts. And that's still pretty much applicable to shrooms as well. Yeah, because when you talk about it, my anxiety, because I do suffer from anxiety, it goes through the already freaking out. Just smoking weed when I was like younger, and there are some times where I smoke weed where I was like, okay, it's fine. But there were times where I smoked weed where I literally thought I was losing my entire. I was like, it's just too much. Like I could not. I was like, get me out of here. I wasn't even in anywhere, really. I was just, So anyway, that's it's just an interesting, because I'm sure people will have that question. Yeah. Right. So first of all, thank you for your transparency and your willingness to let people outside the box, because I believe that we spend a lot of time inside the box in our own lives, and a lot of people would never get a chance to talk to somebody like you because they wouldn't allow themselves to even go on that particular journey. And I believe that your journey as a whole is it's no pun intended, it's just unreal. Like it really has been the journey. So I know this might be a tough ask, but for 1 minute and 30 seconds, are you able to take us on a small meditation? Oh, heck yeah. I was hoping you asked this. Let's go. I'll follow your lead. Okay. All right. So wherever you are, however you are, just allow yourself to get as comfortable as possible. So if you're sitting in a chair, get a little bit more cozy in that space. If you have the ability to lay down, also allow yourself to move into that space as well. And so we're all going to close our eyes and just feel your body from head to toe. Is there anything in your body right now that you are holding on to? And if so, can you invite a wave of relaxation to move in and over your body? Just feeling all the muscles of the face, the jaw, the teeth, and the tongue to relax. The shoulders soften, as well as your arms and your fingers. Your thighs, your knees, your calves, and your feet. Everything is beautiful as it is. And so we're going to take a few inhales and exhales together. Take a deep inhale through your nose and feel your belly rise away from your body. And parting the lips, let a big escape of air move out of your body. And let's do it again. Deep inhale, but this time I want you to envision love pouring into you. Deep inhale. And as you exhale, I want you to share that love with the world. And last time, deepest inhale. And just give it away. And as you sit with yourself, understand that all that you are is beautiful, and that you don't have to be perfect to be amazing. The heart that you feel beat in your chest was perfectly crafted just for you. So listen to that. It is the most beautiful melody you will ever hear. Thank you. Namaste. Namaste. Yeah, you're something else there, young. I call people young fella No, I'm pretty young. I'm 26. Okay, I can call you young fella for like years. No. DeAndre, thank you so much. That was so wonderful. I learned so much. I might be calling on you again, man. Yeah, come on.
I just believe that, and I think the biggest takeaway of my conversation with you is it just validates that. It validates my belief that if you allow yourself to be transparent, you can really, heal yourself in so many different ways. And I know a lot of people out there right now are going through some crazy struggles, different struggles. But I believe that just by allowing yourself to be present and doing the meditation like we just did in itself just allows you to breathe in that good air. I said in my Transform 20 workouts, one of the workouts, I said, breathe in that good air. Because a lot of times we only take in pain. We only take in pain. But sometimes breathe in that good air. And like you said at the end of the meditation, you can let out just so much love by letting that percolate in your soul. DeAndre.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you. This was honestly the biggest gift of 2020 for me. This is amazing. Thank you.
Well, I'm glad I could be a part of that. And thank you so much.